Hello, my name is Nay and welcome back to Nay's Crafty World. Today I will be setting up my second journal for 2023. The theme for this journal is heavily inspired by the dark academia aesthetic, with a focus on vintage papers, texts, and earthy tones. For my color palette, I'm using my Koi Sakura brush pens in the colors pale orange, orange, brown, green, and black. My journal and washi tape is from STHM Stationery. I'm using my Sakura Pigma micron liner pens, size 02 and 03. For calligraphy, I have this airline calligraphy pen, size 2.0. Of course, I'll be using my alphabet stamps. And I'm also using the white and black pencils from my Boldmere color pencil set. As usual, a full list with links is in the description down below. For those of you that don't know already, this year I decided to try out a binder for my bullet journal. So sticking to that, I ordered the same binder cover as my first one, but in this emerald green instead of black. I was pleasantly surprised to see that there are some differences in the material used. The green binder cover has a different texture, as well as copper rings and detailing. For this setup, I planned all the page themes and the color palette in advance, as well as made little thumbnails to help me remember the layout. Now let's jump into my first page. For this page, I'm using my alphabet stamps to stamp out from the library of Nay. I'm keeping it simple with the text only. I want this page to be simple but still go with the theme. The ink I'm using takes a while to dry, so I'm setting it aside for now, and I'm going to move on to preparing the papers for the next page, which will be my key page. Here I have a vintage looking letter, and I'm using one of my craft blades to distress the edges of the paper. I'm not being very careful with the page. Obviously, I don't want to rip it in half, but I'm not worried about tears and bigger gaps in the paper. I want it to look very worn. Making sure to crumple up all the corners. This process is all about adding texture. For the top layer, I took out one of my dotted papers and I'm measuring it by counting the dots. I want the dotted paper to be cut small enough so that I can see the vintage paper around the edges, creating a border. Gluing the paper, I'm not gluing the edges flat because I want it to lift off of the paper a little. Next, I'm using a pencil to plan out my script and then going in with a flat tip calligraphy pen to write out my key title. For the key itself, I'm using a fine liner pen, drawing in the symbols first and then adding the descriptions. And here is where I realized I made a mistake. So next step, cut out some more paper with the same size and start again. For the year page, I decided to use this envelope. I really like the cardboard-like paper on the inside of the envelope. I wanted to draw a castle with black and white pencil, and after looking at a bunch of pictures, I decided to go with the classic Hogwarts castle. I've actually used this picture before, but I was using watercolor paint instead of pencil. For this sketch, I'm using a gray pencil, a black and white Boldmere pencil, and 2 fine liners for details and to darken bigger areas. It turned out really nice and I'm happy I went with this building. It keeps my journal authentically me. I'm actually currently rereading the Harry Potter books, so that's probably why the idea popped into my head. Continuing to the next pages, I'm doing a poem page and a calendar page. Everyone always does a quote page, but I enjoy reading poetry and finding poems that make me think deeper or something that I can relate to me or my life. So for this page, I'm using brown paper and first writing the poem in pencil and then going over that with pen. To give the paper more texture, I'm folding it like you would fold a letter, like it's a poem that's been written and sent to someone. This poem is by Nikita Gill. Wild Embers. We are the descendants of the wild women you forgot. We are the stories you thought would never be told. They should have checked the ashes of the women they burnt alive, because it takes a single wild ember to bring a whole wildfire to life. I only included the months that I will be following in this journal, July to December. Flipping to the next page, I am setting up a double page future log with 6 months. Usually I do a vertical future log, but for this journal, I decided to try the months horizontally. In my last future log, I only really wrote down birthdays, so I didn't fully use the future log as much as I could. So in the next few months, I'm going to try and use it to plan ahead, like including art challenges, like Inktober or December Christmas prompts. In all my previous journals and spreads, I do a lot of watercolor painting. I'm sure that some of you have noticed that I haven't touched my paint in this setup. Don't worry, I will be getting back to painting, but for my journal setup and my coming July spread, I have just been in a more crafty mood, just wanting to rip and glue paper and stickers. Let me know if this is something that you enjoy, or do you prefer my watercolor spreads? Do you mix them in your own? I really like how this washi tape is semi-see-through and you can still see the layers underneath. For the month titles, I'm using simple black paper ripped into similar sized strips, and I'm using my white jelly roller pen to write all the titles. The last few months, I've been more strict with myself with reading. I enjoy reading, but I never give myself the time. So, continuing with my goal of reading more, I'm setting up another reading log, and I want to try to read at least 1 or 2 books per month for now. The first page is not so much a quote as it is a definition, but I really like the concept. Bibliophile, a noun, ferocious reader, devourer of books. For the actual reading log, I once again want to layer papers in more of a junk journal or a scrapbooking style. I enjoy this style, but definitely a simpler version. I'm cutting the black paper in half, keeping the little binder holes so that it looks like a notebook page. For the second paper, I'm using this vintage paper that looks like it's from an old biology or science book. And on top, I'm using dotted paper from the journal. It might seem like a very small area for writing, but I really only write the month that I start the book, the month that I finish it, and the name of the book. And then I usually give it a rating out of 5 stars. I think this turned out to be my favorite page in this setup. For the next spread, I'm setting up a very simple period tracker. I only track my active days, so I don't really need a lot of space or a key. I was going through my stickers and I found this one of Medusa. And I thought that it would be perfect to include her in my spread. When I think of Medusa, I always have the utmost sympathy for her actual, real story. If you don't know the story, I urge you to go and check out one of the many podcasts that tell old folklore, like Mythology on Spotify, or one I often listen to is Lore by Aaron. This is not sponsored, I'm just a big fan and I enjoy these kinds of podcasts. Using my brown Sakura brush pen and my alphabet stamps, I decided to give myself a little compliment on the next page. I know I'll probably need it when the time comes. She's an old soul with young eyes, a vintage heart, and a beautiful mind. Moving on to the last pages, I am setting up a wish list and a goals page for the second half of 2023. I had this little envelope lying around and it just fit into the journal. So I thought of using it as a little pocket for my wish list. For the wish list card, I'm gluing black paper to the back of a sheet of dotted paper to help make it more firm. The style of this list is almost like a library card. The goals page is very simple. I'm using a Sakura micron pen, size 02, to write the header and the 4 different kinds of goals. It helps to specify and break down your big goals into smaller, more achievable goals. I'm leaving the pen ink to properly dry before using my brush pens to highlight all the titles. And there you have it, my new mid-year bullet journal setup. These are all my basic spreads that I will use to plan the rest of my year and continue to improve and grow. Enjoy the final flip through and be sure to follow if you'd like to see my next plan with me for July. Bye.